This is important. I was just driving and sort of having a conversation with somebody in my head, and I heard myself say to this person, you shouldn't write people off because people have the ability to change. I heard this in my imaginary conversation, and I got kind of emotional about it because I realized, this conversation was playing out on autopilot. I'm just driving around, just left the gym, and people don't change, people can't change is, I think, one of the saddest beliefs that a person can hold. And I think many people hold this belief, and I think many people suffer from the illusion that that belief is wisdom. I was one of those people, hardcore, until a few months ago. And I saw the evidence of that play out over and over and over again in my life, to the point where I felt like my understanding that people never change was something beneficial to me that kept me out of trouble. And I realize now that all it really did was not only limit the people in my life from coming across the way I wanted them to, but it also limited me. If people don't change, then neither do I. So here's the thing. I think that this can be a confusing one because, I think the generally accepted wisdom that you shouldn't try to change other people is good. I don't think you should try to change other people. But here's the problem. If you don't believe they can change, they have no chance to be different. It's done. They will come across to you whatever way you've decided they are, because your perception of them is the only thing that's real in your world. And in my experience, you can interpret behavior through your preconceived lens to an astonishing degree. You can find confirmation bias for whatever you think about somebody so easily. And while I don't think that you should change anybody, I don't think you should try to change anybody, showing up in somebody's life and viewing them the way you want them to be and treating them as though they are that thing facilitates that thing coming out. Just think about how certain children blossom with certain teachers. Maybe in your own life, you have somebody that showed up. I do. When I met my now ex, the guy that I own a business with, when I met him 12 years ago, he saw so many things in me that, I kind of suspected were there, but I didn't have a lot of self-confidence. He brought so much good out of me with the way he saw me. From day one, he told me how brilliant I was. He told me how insightful I was. He told me how capable I was. Things where I was just like, no, nobody thinks this but you, or nobody says this to me but you. And it's like the way he saw me was the way I showed up after that. And I often think how lucky I am. What would have happened if he didn't show up and say those things? So I think while you shouldn't try to change somebody, your view of them as the best that they can be facilitates they're changing. And I think that's incredibly different from trying to change somebody. And there's a very fine line there, and this can get really confusing, and it can be toxic if you take that the wrong way. You can't approach people with a sense of need. You can't need somebody to change so that they show up a certain way for you so that you can be okay. If that's where you're coming from, I don't think you're going to get what you want. But when you have completely gotten comfortable and sure of your own perfection, for lack of a better word, when you realize that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you and that everything that is projecting out negatively in your life is just something you added on or somebody else added on, when you go through and get rid of all that shit and you're fine, all of a sudden you don't really need people to show up a certain way. And then when you start affirming things about them, they show up that way. All of that to say, if you are harboring the belief that people don't change, people can't change, that's a really beneficial one to get rid of. That alone will revolutionize all of your relationships. But it really starts with you being okay with you on a really, really core level. Not just saying, I love myself, I'm great, but really deeply understanding that you're an offshoot of God. Your core is God. It's perfect. Everything else is just something you added on after the fact. Good luck. I'm really excited that this has become a part of my natural way of approaching the world. It's creating miracles as far as I'm concerned.